Hello people, this is a bit of a different video today. This is an audio only video. I don't usually do these. I don't usually read my written material, but given the current events, I think it's important to record this text in particular. This is an excerpt from my upcoming guide, Build Your Own Athenian Shrine, where I detail the process of constructing your very own shrine to Athena, the goddess of wisdom, in your backyard. This is an excerpt entitled, Is Athenian Worship Problematic? As I began this experiment, I posted some photos of the shrine online. As it turned out, this was a mistake. Within a few days, a practicing Christian was making fun of my sincere attempt to worship Athena and asked if I had chosen Athena because out of the entire Greek pantheon, she was the least problematic. Rich words coming from a Christian, eh? If the worship of any god should be viewed as problematic in the 21st century, it ought to be this psychopath Yahweh. More violence has been carried out through human history in Yahweh's name than any other god as far as I'm aware. Under his various pseudonyms is the Father, Allah, Jehovah, etc., this murderous patriarch has been responsible for most of the violence committed by Europe and the Middle East over the past 2 millennia. The number of people killed in his name must easily exceed 5 billion in the Crusades, the genocide of Native Americans, the colonization of Africa and China by the British Empire, the erasure of the native Egyptian and animist cultures of the African continent by Islam, the Holocaust, the Irish Troubles, all wars fought by America in the Middle East with Christian undertones, the erasure of the Norse, Celtic, Germanic, and Greek pantheons by the papacy during the medieval period. The list goes on. If we add to this tally the number of people killed in the name of Yahweh's idiot son, Jesus of Nazareth, the narcissistic domestic terrorist who hastened the collapse of the Roman Empire through domestic terrorism and screamed at a fruit tree for being out of season, if we add in the buckets of blood spilled by Yahweh's appointed prophet Muhammad, who married a 6-year-old when he was 53, and if we accept all the imaginary deaths in the fairy tale that is the Old Testament as fact, then Yahweh is undoubtedly the mass murderer of them all. Compare this with the number of people killed in Athena's name. Despite being a war goddess, I would be amazed if the number of people killed back in antiquity in her name, even in a relatively large-scale conflict like the Trojan War, was anywhere near the number of people killed in a religiously justified global war like today. But I get what a smart aleck comment like this is getting at. The Greek gods are not at all perfect in the way illiterate Christians understand divinity. The Greek gods cheat, steal, rape, kill their parents, curse people, and so on. The thing is, gods do not need to be perfect. Gods, like the Goodfellas, are fictional characters who do things in imaginary stories for our amusement, and the Greeks understood this. This is why Greek stories are still entertaining and resonant today, and Christian stories are boring crap nobody actually cares about or would ever find remotely interesting. The violence committed by the Greek pantheon is not at all an accident. It is meant to reflect, as I mentioned earlier, the inherent folly of the human condition. The Greek gods behave in human ways because they were created by humans, and while Yahweh in his stories displays just as much wrath, anger, vengeance, pettiness, all the indications of human authorship, he is held to an entirely separate standard by Christians, who insist somehow that he is morally perfect. I don't believe in such a thing as original sin. In fact, I don't believe sin exists, but I do believe that no human being can be morally perfect, because moral perfection is a hypothetical impossibility, like infinity or an absolute vacuum. It is healthy and beneficial to accept that as a human being, you have flaws and make mistakes and experience human emotions. Morality is subjective. No complete treatise on morality has ever been created, and if it has, it's certainly not the blood-soaked tome that is the Holy Babel. What is not healthy is to believe that Christian moral standards, of all things, can somehow fix you or make you a better person. To attempt to follow the guidelines set out by a supposedly perfect being is futile, as you are not God. You will never be. As I write this, my country has been hijacked by a despot who believes himself to be anointed by Yahweh and believes that visiting destruction upon Iran will win him favor with Yahweh. I have seen many Christians disown this behavior, claiming that true Christians would never do so-and-so, or real Christianity does not approve of this. The unfortunate truth is, Christianity, as an offshoot of the Judaic beliefs espoused in the Old Testament, absolutely does approve of and endorse the ideology that it's cool and awesome to visit righteous vengeance upon your enemies, even if they believe in the exact same fucking God you do under a different name. Christians have been killing Muslims since the Crusades, all because one group calls him Yahweh and one group calls him Allah, and then the Children's Crusade happened and thousands of orphans walked hundreds of miles into the Middle East to get enslaved and raped and killed, all while Yahweh sat back and grinned like the supposedly morally perfect, flawless entity he is. Give me a break. Some time ago, I began attending an event hosted by a white Christian guy in a church who claimed he wanted to provide opportunities for disenfranchised groups such as people of color and LGBTQ people. I volunteered to operate the sound for the event since I've operated the sound systems for several local events and know how to properly adjust reverb and echo and that sort of thing. However, I was passed up and another bland white Christian man was chosen for the position instead. The truth is, Christians will only ever provide opportunities for fellow Christians. They do not care if you're an atheist or autistic or asexual. They'll look down on you with condescension while building up their own monumental egos. They're boring people with very limited perspectives and worldviews. They're the human equivalent of stale toast. The thing is, Christianity always has and always will appeal to gullible, morally righteous, uneducated people with low self-esteem and narcissistic tendencies. Christianity, as a system of belief that worships a morally perfect God, enables the most annoying, self-serving kind of despot to do absolutely anything under the supposed approval of God. Epstein Island? That's fine with God as long as God approves, which apparently he does, and nobody can prove he doesn't because he's not real. This is a feature, not a bug of Christianity. We can only see so many bloodthirsty reigns conducted by absolute power-glomming maniacs, specifically in the name of Yahweh, before we conclude that this is no coincidence, that Christianity, on a basic level, was created by morally flawed people to be used by extremely morally flawed people, way more flawed than average, to justify power and exploitation. This pattern is repeated so often that we intelligent people can go ahead, toss the Bible in the dumpster, and pick up a nice copy of Candide instead. Ask yourself, how many holy wars have been committed in Zeus's name recently? That's right, absolutely fucking none. And the reason why Hellenic deities stopped being worshipped isn't because they're problematic. It's actually due to a sort of religious natural selection. Of course, a religion that claims to hold all the morally perfect, objectively true answers dispensed by one singular authoritative deity would gain traction over a morally complex, polytheistic doctrine where you have to choose one deity out of dozens based on your own personal values. That would require you to have unique personal values as an individual to begin with. Of course, a religion that promises eternal life in a golden palace in the clouds in exchange for unwavering devotion and obedience would gain traction over a religion where no matter how good or bad you are, you'll end up ferried across the river Styx into the cold, dead underworld and rot away in a cave forever. That's far too realistic and correct an interpretation of how death works to be popular with the average gullible moron. Only intelligent people would have the humility and foresight to adopt a problematic religion like Hellenism. It has bad PR. Everyone else will rush for the cheap, commercialized trinket of monotheistic Christianity, the option that pats your ass and coddles you and tells you everything will be alright as long as you pay your tithe. In the modern day, the church has struggled with PR due to the many children who were raped by priests in confession booths over the years, among many other things, and is looking for a sort of rebrand. Under such conditions, it makes sense that Christianity, like the petty, vindictive Ponzi scheme it is, would lash out at other religions. Oh, you worship Athena? Wow, that's problematic. I worship the god that turns people into pillars of salt and asks men to kill their sons. Nothing I believe is problematic at all. And of course they mock me, an atheist, for trying this sort of thing out, claiming that as an atheist, it's wrong for me to even attempt this. In their view, it's either Yahweh or nothing, and they hold every other system of belief to a completely unfair double standard. Is it problematic that the ancient Greeks permitted homosexuality because they were not restricted by the barbaric shackles of Judeo-Christian dogma? It's only problematic if you're a homophobe. Is it true that the ancient Greeks practiced a form of homosexuality where, say, a 22-year-old might couple up with a 16-year-old? Yes, certainly. But that was over 2,000 years ago, when the average human lifespan was 50, and 25 was considered middle age. So the age of consent was different, and it makes no sense to hold Greek culture to modern standards. And let's also keep in mind that those were just some random people among a vast civilization of many. Unlike Islam, where the Prophet, the righteous Yahweh-ordained central figure, married someone under the age of 10 when he was over 50, I'm pretty sure that kind of relationship is much more fucked up than anything the Greeks could even imagine. But you'll probably never hear a Muslim who criticizes the Greeks for their supposed hedonism talk or think about it much. Anyway, the they had gay relationships angle is wholly unrelated to Greek religion, and is really just a veiled attempt by people who belong to a group that has historically been homophobic to shit on a culture that thrived and blossomed without any awareness of or help from Yahweh, well before Jesus' birth. Because the existence of such a civilization poses an existential threat to a system of belief that claims to have the universally correct answer for everything in the most cloying, insufferable manner possible. From personal experience, people who have been raised under a Christian belief system, even when they claim to disown said beliefs, live in a kind of permanent ideological prison. This is not to say the prison cannot be escaped, but it requires a heck of a lot of work to avoid subtle Christian things such as the Protestant work ethic, if one is not trained to spot them. There is a reason so many ex-Christians just become edgy reactionary Satanists rather than looking into neo-Hellenism or animism or the Chinese mandate of heaven or Aboriginal Dreamtime, and this is because it is much easier to simply adopt another character from Christian mythology than expose oneself to the beautiful panacea that is all of human culture. At the most, an ex-Christian might become an atheist, but these are atheists who similarly only believe that atheism is a reactionary position adopted by people who were raised with Christianity, rather than a philosophy and culture in and of itself, with a rich history going back hundreds of years, and that the first atheists were actually Nordic and had nothing to do with Christianity. You will virtually never see a Christian who says he disowns the Bible and claims to be open-minded constructing a big golden statue of Zeus from tinfoil out in his garage. I'll just say that. But we atheists are much more open-minded, and since Christianity is currently just serving as justification for yet another bloody war like the deeply problematic school of thought it is, we may as well simply disregard it, ignore it, and try something else. Why the heck not Athena? Athena's nice. Athena doesn't ask for my money. Athena doesn't sacrifice our troops. Athena doesn't comfort dictators who threaten world peace. Athena just reads books. Nobody would find that problematic unless one found the concept of wisdom itself problematic. Oh, wait.